8 o'clock, so I'm going to call this meeting of the Capital Improvement Planning Committee to order. And just pursuant to Governor Baker's orders, we are holding this via Zoom, so just be careful when you are sharing screen that it is public. And if you want to read more about our public meeting, it's posted online. So I'm going to do roll call. So we'll start with Sue Robbins.
Sue Robbins here.
Craig Marr.
Here.
Amy Marr.
Here.
And Colleen Roy here. And then staff, we have Dr. Cummings.
Dr. Cummings here.
And Ms. Patel.
Here.
Awesome. So that's it. And we'll start with Ms. Cummings.
All right. Awesome. Thank you very much. I'll share my screen. I'm going to run through with Anita. We've got about 9 slides. And feel free to interrupt me at any time. So we wanted to, I'll give you a little bit of history, but tonight wanted to get the involvement, get the basically the thinking of CIPC as we're, I'm going to speak to it, but as we're considering different ways to approach capital. The CIPC members should have received an overview memo from myself and Anita, as well as the full Excel workbook that was provided by Train. You'll find with that Excel workbook, you can take project, we'll talk about it, but you can take projects out, you could add projects, you can basically interact with that workbook. And I think you'll find it's very user-friendly in terms of.
Jay, is that the Excel workbook that was on your materials?
Correct.
Okay.
Not the one last night. I only shared it with Colleen, and I don't know, Colleen, if you had a chance to share it, but the interactive workbook I sent to Colleen, I don't know, last week maybe.
I've not seen that, so.
I can't remember if I forwarded it to everybody, so I will at the end of this meeting.
Okay, and if you don't have it, I certainly can. Train did ask. They were totally great with us. I talked about how right from the get-go, we wanted to at least involve CIPC in that conversation. They were great with that. They did ask that we don't share it, with the world, but I can share screenshots and pieces, which I did last night. So those are the materials. You already met Anita, who was our finance director, and we're off and running. If I can just get to the next slide. All right, so in total, we have about 610,000 square feet of space with our 6 buildings, the oldest being North Grafton Elementary School, built in 1954, and then the high school is obviously our newest building, built and opened in 2012. So we have a lot of space. As I think most of you know, for the past 7 or 8 years, we as a school district have put together a fairly comprehensive 5-year capital plan. The reality is that plan, although it's fairly pretty and I think it's very comprehensive, it's disconnected from funding realities. Every year, the school district receives between $200,000 and $500,000 roughly in capital funding. We generally find out how much we have to spend, say, late April informally, usually formally in May. That gives us a very small amount of time to actually plan for and line up the projects to take place when we don't have kids in the building, which is mid-June through mid-August. So we've got that really small window. Of course, if we have an outdoor project, we don't have a ton of those, but if we do, I suppose we could do it when school's in session. But generally, it's going to happen when school is not in session. So between that amount of funding, again, for over 600,000 square feet of space, and the timing being April or May, it really is only conducive to generally those smaller scope projects. Often what we're able to get to is paving, flooring in the buildings, replacing tile, replacing carpeting, accessibility projects that we've chipped away at over the years, like taking out antiquated doorknobs and putting in ADA compliant door handles, for example, ramps, that type of thing. So there's a big disconnect between that fairly pretty plan and the funding realities. Our existing needs, we have many existing needs. The biggest and most focused on areas for us are the heating and ventilation systems in all of the school buildings outside of the high school, and then the windows at North Street Elementary School. And we've talked about those with CIPC certainly, and at town meeting in the past. I'll touch on that in a minute. Right now, only Grafton High School has air conditioning in the updated ventilation systems. So we have obviously cleaned and updated to the greatest degree possible our existing ventilation systems, but we don't have the most current updated recommended filtration in 5 of the 6 buildings right now. New roofs, that's always a need. Right now we don't have any failing roofs. The 2, if we could kind of wave a magic wand and replace roofs tomorrow, we would do so at South Grafton Elementary School and North Street Elementary School. Both, in essence, need entire new roof systems. There's also a portion of the middle school that was replaced within the last decade, but it had a 10-year warranty on it. Our thinking for the purpose, we're open to anything, and we'll get to it, but when Train went through and did their assessment of the district needs, we asked them to look at the roofs, and they did so, and those projects are in the Excel workbook that we'll share with you. But for our purposes and our thinking, when we met with Train, I think we're better off taking those roofing projects out of the immediate projects of focus and thinking of those as potential bonding or grant projects that could be addressed in the future. They're very high cost and they don't provide significant energy returns, which we'll talk about. So what led us to looking at energy performance contracts was a pursuit of alternative approaches. I spoke to the inefficiency of the system that we've been using for at least the past 10 years, I'm assuming for 20 or 30 years, with the timing and the funding amounts. A couple years back, we applied for an MSBA grant for new windows at North Street Elementary School. We've talked about this very publicly for, it seemed like forever, but it was probably a year and a half, where we have 190 windows, most of them failing at the school. We had a grant accepted for 52 cents on the dollar, but the costs just were too much for the town to approve. So in lieu of participating in that full replacement program, the town did fund, I forget the exact number, but I want to say a couple $100,000 to do caulking on the windows, replace hardware, install blinds. So it was certainly an upgrade, but it was a far cry from the needed replacement on the failing windows. So by pointing that out, it's not to cry over, spilled milk, if you will. It's to say that we have pursued grants, and even grants that were accepted. We were accepted into these grant programs and still could not get those very needed projects passed. So we then said, what else could we look at? And that was energy performance contracts. We talked extensively with the school committee last year. They approved us to go out to bid for completion of an energy audit by a number of companies. It was bid upon. We ended up going with Train. They came in and completed the audit for all of our schools earlier this fall. We just got around to last night. Myself and Anita presented to the school committee and we talked about the audit. We went through basically this PowerPoint, shared with them the same information, and shared with them that we would be talking with CIPC. What we wanted to do is obviously explore options, identify ideas that we think could potentially be beneficial for the school district and certainly the town. And then at the earliest convenience possible, and thank you guys for having us, it was to get in front of CIPC to get your expertise, to get your thoughts on it, not just tonight, but moving forward, and look for that input and guidance. It might just not be a fit for the town. It might, for reasons I'm not aware of, just could be something that isn't of interest, and that's okay too. I'd rather know on the front end than do what is sometimes seen in different departments, different towns, where one group, be it schools or another department, has almost a pet project, runs with that, and then, you know, after it's left the barn ages ago, puts it before a committee that's set up for this very type of discussion. So we wanted to do that at the earliest convenience, and that's why we're here tonight. So when we looked at all of the projects, there were other projects looked at, and you have full access to those, or you will once we share that, that Excel workbook. The ones that we took the roof projects off, and that was the ones before you in green are the projects that are basically being recommended by Train. So when we met with them, and we just met with them once, and we just talked to them on the phone numerous times, they presented to myself, Anita, and Tony LeMay, who is our Director of Buildings and Grounds. So they went through and looked for needed projects that gave the biggest bang for the buck in terms of return, return in the form of reduced energy costs going forward. So 3 of the schools need new heating boiler plants. We have the high school is obviously 8 years old. That one's in fantastic shape. Over the past 5 years, we did replace the boilers at the middle school in North Grafton. I'd love to tell you that that was in an effort to be proactive. In actuality, they just stopped working, and we had to find monies and make that work. This would include new HVAC equipment at 5 of the schools, every school except for the high school. This would also include air conditioning, which we don't have in any school except the high school. But nowadays, if you're going to replace heating and ventilation systems, that same equipment is built with that AC built into it now. So that would provide for all kinds of new opportunities for us in terms of use of the schools in the summer that we just currently don't have. Right now, we push almost everything into the high school. We'd have new controls at all buildings, lighting retrofit in all buildings, seal up all of the building envelopes, new walk-in freezer controls and kitchen hood controls, new ventilation systems at 3 of the schools. That combination of that ventilation system with the HVAC equipment would greatly enhance our overall ventilation and heating and cooling systems to be fully upgraded to provide a level of filtration that is state of the art, if you will. And obviously this right now is of great interest to us. While we always want clean air and solid ventilation, it's obviously with COVID never been a greater priority, at least in my lifetime. And then finally, it would include the new windows at North Street Elementary School. That's a full replacement of the 190 windows.
Jay, may I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to ask about the boiler plant. Didn't Honeywell supposed to replace one of those boilers?
They may have at the middle school.
I don't remember, but I thought that was one of the things.
Yeah, it was one that probably goes back 8 years.
Yes.
And it was just simply failing. I forget which one was failing. The other one, maybe that was North Grafton, when we switched over there to natural gas at that same time.
Oh, that's when yes, I remember that when you were switching. So it must
I think it was North Grafton, and middle school was just a failure.
Okay.
And I don't say just, but it wasn't like we did it. I'd love to say we were thinking ahead, etc. We didn't have heat is really the driving force. So again, with these, I'm just trying to provide an overview. The committee, I mean, us as a group, Grafton could take projects off. They could put roofing projects on. We could do 2 of the projects and not do all. So this is just it's intended to be just a basic overview. In terms of cost, this is by not having that workbook, this is doing a disservice to what you're going to be able to see there. Obviously, in one slide, I couldn't capture the entire tab in that workbook, but there's a cost tab. I think it's the third tab in. And this is a screenshot from that tab, but the actual tab has years 1 through 20. So it's a 20-year program, if you will. If you look in the green, that is what they identify as savings. So those are guaranteed by Train to be savings. And what that is a decrease in the amount. If we don't do these projects, they are guaranteeing that we will spend those figures. And again, this just shows years 1 through 5, but we provided 1 through 20. You will see what that number is. So I would assume that what we would do, and I would need the guidance, or we would need the guidance of CIPC if we were to move forward. I'm not sure exactly how they did it with the Honeywell project, but I would assume that we would be decreasing our electrical and natural gas requests by those figures going forward. So those monies would have, again, been spent on these energy costs. Anita can speak to some thoughts on how that could be packaged, if you will, but our ask every year in terms of utilities would decrease accordingly. That's in the green. Down in the yellow, that doesn't cover everything. We need to be right in the middle. You can see the financing repayment. That's the amount every year, that $500,000 for 20 years that needs to be paid to Train for payment of the projects. The number as we move, if you go year 2 and beyond, you can see it's, at least for the first few years, around 270,000. The difference needs to be made up through capital, whether that's monies that are allocated to the schools and that payment is made. It can be framed a bunch of different ways, but it's a combination of those savings or reduction in energy costs plus that annual net cash flow, which is monies that we would pay out of capital. So that would be the payment plan, if you will, structured for 20 years. I only provided on this slide the first 5 years. And you will see this in the workbook. When you look at it across 20 years, just to make it somewhat understandable, and I hope this is, over the course of the 20 years, their guaranteed savings in terms of energy costs, because of the annual increase or anticipated increase in energy costs, that number rises and goes up every year. You can see, obviously, in year 20, it's about 444,000. So that increases over the 20 years. If we're saving more with those guaranteed savings, so coming off from, again, that reduction in the ask made annually, that is paired with a decrease in what was in yellow in terms of what would come out of capital, if you will. So those two things work in conjunction, but if we did all of those projects that I outlined, we'd be looking at just over 500,000 a year for the 20-year span. Is there anything on that you wanted to add to, Anita?
Yes, so I just want to make sure that everyone understands the payment structure. So what Jay was saying is okay, perfect. So on this slide where it says our projected energy savings for year 1 is 249,707. Then if you add the 6,500, the first year we would get a utility rebate. So Train would guarantee our savings of $578,000, but going forward to year 2, they would only guarantee the $263,000. So what we would do is we would reduce our general fund ask under our utilities, and that money, in addition to any capital money we get, that money would be used to pay back the debt, which is the financing repayment of that 506,694 figure in that row. Does that make sense? I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that.
Anita, how did they calculate the energy savings? Do you know how those are calculated, the energy savings?
So that is through rebates, and actually that's on the spreadsheet that Jay was referring to. There's a tab on there that actually goes over all of the savings and how it's calculated.
Just
It's
so
not-
the committee members are aware, I did just send that to your emails, so you should have it.
Thanks, Amy.
And if anyone has questions like tomorrow or whenever, feel free to call me because I'm more than happy to go over it with anybody if you guys have any questions.
So you're going to need upfront money though to borrow, is that correct?
So
To get
So what
started?
So I'm not going to say it's upfront. We would basically need the money through capital in order for the debt service.
Okay,
So our general fund budget would be decreased by that 263,000. So that savings would be used for our debt payment with the capital money that we get from the town.
now do you know how you would calculate that savings? Because I know in the Honeywell project, they said that we would have all these savings. And when I asked to see what we've saved between the schools and the municipal center, they could never calculate them for me. They said they didn't know how to go about doing that. Are you going to have the same problem?
We are not.
I hope not.
I
Ironically,
hope not too, because I could never get a straight answer.
no, I mean, it's very ironic because Jay and I actually spoke about that this afternoon. And we were saying that Train is going to be providing us a report on that on a monthly basis. And I told Jay that I'll make sure that I'm in charge of making sure that we're actually capturing all of our savings that are promised to us on a monthly basis, Joe, just so we can annualize what our savings are.
Because we just don't want to end up having to because our operating budget already has one energy project in it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure we didn't have to worry about that. And I guess the other thing is that is Train doing things that Honeywell has already done, or are these totally new projects? Because Honeywell did some things, Univets, I remember, at the schools. Is that part of this again, or?
For the most part, no. I would think there might be some overlap with the controls in terms of, but I can certainly find out. They will obviously know.
Okay.
I guess my last point is most of the stuff up top on this slide, I think I talked about. If future roofing projects are pursued, I think it is important to note that they're paired with solar. That's almost automatic, but the solar offset it really just isn't that substantial. And I'm not looking for it necessarily tonight, but if the CIPC over whenever you guys meet are at least interested in looking further into this, we can certainly have Train present to us. Assuming we're going to be virtual, they can meet with us virtually. They were fantastic when we met with them. We were very, very impressed. To speak to those details, I know the school committee we presented last night, and they seemed very interested in at least pursuing it and having that follow-up conversation with Train to get more detail. And that's all I have. We can take any questions, any direction that the CIPC might have.
So is Train coming in to meet with school committee?
I think it was only yesterday, so if you think I'd remember it. I believe the thought was if CIPC was open to it, we could set up 2 different meetings, or we could have a joint meeting between school committee and CIPC and have Train in once.
I think doing a joint meeting would make the most sense. Just do it one time so we can all hear it together.
Yep. I have, after I heard this last night and then learned a couple of more things this evening, but I certainly think it's worth looking into, especially now during the pandemic when the schools need ventilation issues cleared up and taken care of. And I would like to investigate it some more and have all the numbers worked out a little bit better. But I think it's a worthwhile project. I think it's something that just needs to be done. It's just a matter of we can do it all, or can we do
Sure.
most of it. So,
and I think if you do get a chance, you're going to find that Excel workbook to be interesting. I think you're going to find it to be pretty user-friendly. It has a lot of information. So if between school committee and CIPC, everybody gets the chance to play with that a little bit and then have, again, a really more informed, more in-depth discussion with Train, I think might be very beneficial all around. So I'll work with, if Colleen, if as chair is open to it, I'll work with Colleen and Laura often and connect with Train, and we'll set up a time.
Okay, sounds like a good plan.
Love it.
Okay.
Okay. Could you go back to the slide with the different projects on it for a minute, please? The ionization system, is that not needed at the other buildings, or can it just not be?
That's a fantastic question, Greg. I forget the answer. They gave me the very simplistic explanation of what it was. I can definitely get that answer for you. You don't happen to remember, do you, Anita?
I don't.
Okay.
And the other question,
go ahead.
just what were the controls, the new controls, the freezer controls, the kitchen hood controls?
I don't know that either, other than they gave a fundamental overview of there are more modernized controls to obviously control temperature and humidity that would be much more efficient than what we had that was even 8 years old.
Okay.
So the new controls would go with the HVAC equipment, is where it says new controls, that would go with HVAC?
Yes, that's my understanding. It would be all, right, it would be all new. I'm sure it's computer-based controls.
I was just going to chime in that a lot of it is just programmability,
Correct.
allowing someone like Tony LeMay, for example, to set when things are going to be on, what the temperature is going to be, and leave it, as opposed to people constantly going in and changing it.
Yep.
That was my understanding from what I read.
No, you're correct.
Could you talk a little bit about the building envelope, Jay?
Yeah, that one's probably the most straightforward, where just like you would do in your house probably this time of year, of caulking windows, just making sure all the doors are sealed properly. That one out of all of the projects is probably the lowest in terms of cost, but they said it's got a significant return on it, especially with our older buildings. I mean, 66-year-old buildings are inefficient, to say the least.
And we'll probably learn a little bit more in that Excel workbook thing.
Yeah, you will there, and then they'll have a whole group.
Okay.
I mean, they had. It seems like I met with them ages ago. It was only maybe a month and a half ago, but they were really fantastic, and they can speak to this certainly a lot more comprehensively than I can. All right.
Do you have workup numbers for all these costs for the performance projects?
Correct.
That's all in the Excel workbook as well?
Yep,
Okay, good. Okay, good.
And if you have any questions, I probably won't have the answer on the details, but before we meet next, if there's anything that you just don't want to wait for, just let myself or Anita know, and we can reach out, and
Okay.
We can definitely get the answer.
All right.
Well, thank you very much for coming in and presenting that. That was awesome, and I think very exciting.
Well, thank you very much for having us. We appreciate it. And I'll reach out to you tomorrow, Colleen and Laura.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
So before you
Good
leave,
night.
Jay,
Oh,
to make
yep.
Colleen the host.
Yep. I was just about to get out. That would have really not been a good way to end.
While you're doing that, I just wanted to say thanks again for you and Anita coming in tonight. I know we just did this last night, so having it 2 nights in a row is kind of a big ask. I appreciate it. I wouldn't have been able to explain it as well, so I'm glad you guys did it.
We're happy to be here.
Yeah.
Colleen, are you the host now?
I am the host now.
Oh, perfect. All right. Phew. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Great
Good.
night.
All right.
That's exciting.
Yeah, can I ask a question before we move on to the next agenda item?
Yes.
My understanding is that the way that we, and I'm going to use school committee, we didn't vote on it, but But the way that we'd be looking to structure this, would this require a motion at town meeting, or would this just be lumped in with the budget? That's my question.
That's a great question. I don't have the answer. I don't
Okay.
know. I would have to
They
check.
seem to feel that that we would need a special town meeting to approve the funding in time to start the work for the summer, because May town meeting would be too late.
If it's going to come from the capital, that would just be on the capital budget. If that's
Right.
how you're going to upfront everything, starting with that and then with the savings. So I don't know, I'd have to look at more of the numbers and
Yeah.
see how they're calculated, how they're worked out, and look at
But I
the whole
see
thing.
what you're saying, because even if it was on capital, that wouldn't get approved until July, which is past when you would want to be doing that.
Right.
You want the money sooner than the next fiscal year.
Right. But even if we waited, if we can't start work until July 1, that isn't enough time to get the work done when we can do the work. We'd have to wait till fiscal year 22. Well, calendar year 22. Fiscal 23, really, right?
So I think,
We'll put it off.
has anyone spoken to Mr. Terenzini about this at all or reached out? No, okay.
Well, Jay may have.
Jay-
Jay may have, but he's not going to be here. Carter.
He's
So-
not, but with the timing of everything on, if we were going to go down this avenue and if the idea of a special town meeting needed to happen, I think those conversations need to happen while Carter's here and then transition those conversations when we have our next town administrator, unfortunately. Because you don't want to just plop that on someone's lap on day one, like, oh, please schedule this for something that we all like, but you haven't heard of, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
I would think that unless the year one cost can be absorbed by the current FY budget, assuming there actually is any cost before July 1st and not just a commitment, then that would have to be approved by town meeting. If there are no payments due until next fiscal year, then it can probably just go in the next budget.
So
But
they
in
would
order
start
for the
work
money
on
to be-
faith.
Well, in order for the money to be released, though, you're going to have to do, if they want to start paying invoices in June, you're going to have a special meeting.
Right.
You have to have the money. And I guess I'll just throw this out there. If we're going to have a special for a capital project, maybe we should just have all the capital done at that time. Because there are things that I know that the town can't get going on until after July 1st, and they're always in a hurry getting things done during the summer months as well. So, I mean, it's just something to throw out there, consider. I'm not saying we should do it that way, but it's something to think about anyway. That way we could just get all the capital approved.
Yeah, some of that, I think it's going to depend on when Train would need a commitment in order to start work over the summer. If they need a commitment in February to start work in June, then that's different than if they need a commitment late May after May town meeting to start work in June.
Is that what they said, Amy, in the Excel workbook?
It's, I didn't see that in the workbook, but when I spoke to Jay, I had an exchange with Jay. He indicated that they would need to know sooner than we would be able to give them in May. So he was concerned that we would need a special.
So something as early as February, though?
He didn't say a specific month, but it's something we can ask them when we meet with them.
Okay.
Does a commitment mean they need money though, or can we just sign a
Okay.
contract and negotiate when the first payment is?
That's a good question. I don't have the answer to that.
Because the idea of just the town meeting next week is stressful, right? And this is like decent weather October. January, the special town meeting, get out of town. I feel like that would be so stressful and just controversial, honestly.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out a way we could do it without needing a special town meeting at all.
Right. I think that just
So-
is requiring to have more people in this conversation
Yeah,
to
okay.
that might know more. But
Yeah.
definitely it's worth investigating.
I would think, I know when we've had specials for other things, it was usually April, not February.
And that might be enough. We'll
I
have
think
to
the high school was January or February.
That was a different circumstance, I think, though.
No pandemic, right?
Right. Right.
The killer, that pandemic.
I'm flipping
So I-
through.
they might be up to not having anything until, April to have a special if they understand that we're not going to sit out in snowbanks to vote.
It may be trained to be understanding in that as well, saying that it's not an ideal time to be, in a normal circumstance, sure, that's what we would be doing, but because this is not normal, is this a contract we can sign with you with the understanding that a payment will, I don't know. But, and then if the vote doesn't go, now you've signed a contract, maybe contingent upon, this is above my pay grade.
There's a lot that needs to be worked out before we get there.
So here's another question. At what point would it be appropriate? Well, would it be appropriate to see if FinCom wants to sit in on the train? Or,
Yeah, I mean, I think.
or as their rep, Sue, are you enough?
No, I think it would be, I think it would be good for them to hear. There's never always enough time. I mean, this is one project that should probably give more attention to. And no, I think the whole FinCom should be invited to do that.
And if they can't make it, they could watch the recording.
True. But they wouldn't get to ask questions, though. That's the thing. And I know that there'd be some that would want to ask questions, like stuff about Honeywell. A lot of them don't know about that anyway, but anyway, what FinCom members can make it, I think they should.
Yeah. Okay.
You never can get too much information when you're making decisions like this, so.
I like it.
I have a housekeeping item for Greg.
Great.
Greg, Katie needs to know which pizza is hers.
Bottom.
Thank you. Sorry.
She said if Train is coming out, instead of having them come out a second time for Finance Committee, this might be, if they're willing, have all the people that are going to be involved there at one time.
Yeah,
No.
I think it's nice, especially with Zoom. It might be overwhelming, whoever's hosting that, to keep an eye on everybody, but no more overwhelming than putting all of those people in one room. It's just, I agree with you. So I think having everybody there the first time, hearing it the same way instead of potentially hearing it different ways.
Mark can handle the Zoom.
That's right.
He can
I assume
handle
it would be over Zoom. I can't imagine. I mean,
What?
maybe I'm wrong. I assume it would be over Zoom.
No, but you know what I'm saying? Like the last TriComs, whenever we do TriComs in person pre-pandemic, that was the big complaint. That's so many people in one room. At least on Zoom, you can get a ton of people in one room and fine, make it work. All right, is everybody done with this topic? Any more questions?
Yeah, it would only be 17 of us plus Train and the school department. So not too. We could probably keep it under 25 people.
I think we could do it. I mean, and all the Finance Committee members aren't going to make it. Not everybody can make the dates. We're having a hard time just getting the meeting together. So.
That'll be fun. All right, so we're gonna review the recent meeting with CPC in regards to the bylaw for town meeting. Does anybody want to say anything about that?
I did not send out the recommendation I wrote with it being tweaked by Greg, but you'll see it when the warrants it's probably the warrants recommendations have to be on the website by now because Sue had to get everything printed up. So, but I did my best.
Thank you, Sue.
Yep.
I thought it went all right.
I think it went well. I think it answered all their questions. I would be very surprised if they got up at town meeting with any more questions. I thought they seemed satisfied. But who knows, maybe something else.
Let me remind you that they seemed satisfied last time too. So
Well, they seemed satisfied. The only hesitation I had is when Paul said, well, I guess we can trust you.
yeah,
As we were closing and I thought, it isn't about trust. It isn't about, there was nothing, we were not usurping them. We were not taking away any of their power,
Nope.
Nothing. We just wanted, information from them if we needed it.
Yep. And you know, it's for the betterment of the town. It's not, no one's trying to take anything away. We're trying to build something up. And I think that's what maybe that message kind of got lost a little bit for some of them, but
we
I
can't
it's
take
new.
anything away from them. There's
what?
under the law, we can't take anything away from
Right,
them. So,
exactly. And that was stated, you know, we'd like to be able to capture all the capital projects in town in one place. That's it. We're not telling you how to spend your money.
and when most of the time, when you think about it though, most of their projects come before the town meeting. So we have their warrant articles.
Yeah.
And all their information.
Yep.
So it's just a matter of going back and collecting over the years, but I would think that that's what they'll be working on anyway,
Right.
you know, besides the land things they have to do for the state.
Which, if I remember right, we're not dealing with that at all, right?
No,
We're not dealing with land.
nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
No, I think it went well. I think the
Okay.
graphic you made, Colleen, was good.
I think that was very helpful.
Is that something you're gonna, well, we don't have anything about town meeting on the agenda.
We
But is-
don't, but we do have to touch on it,
Okay.
because I will not be attending town meeting. I do not feel safe attending town meeting indoors. That being said, I will not be able to present on the bylaw. Unless town meeting gets postponed or moved to an outdoor event, I will not be attending that. So I don't know if I have a volunteer who would like to present the bylaw. If not, the select board supporting it, maybe I can find a select board member to present on it.
I would think Matt could present on it, but I after what I read in the paper today about us becoming a red state for COVID, David and I talked about it, and we're not going to attend if it's going to be inside.
I'm hoping with the logistics meeting tomorrow, I mean, this is not on our agenda, so we probably shouldn't talk about it, but I'm just hoping we won't have to make that choice.
Right.
Okay, so I'll reach out to Matt, see what he says about that, and then we'll see what happens. Maybe there's just no presenter. It's just a vote. I don't know. I hope that's not the case, but we'll see. All right, we're moving on to review the scoring system. So let me share my screen and do I know how to do that? Bear with me if I share anything. I don't know if I can pick it. Advanced. Let's try that. Can you guys, what do you guys see right now? Can you see this? Does this look overwhelming with a bunch of numbers to you?
Whoa, hey.
Oh,
Right, so you see it, great. Okay, so this is the scoring system CIPC used to use, and it is very overwhelming looking, but I promise you it's super easy. So there's a couple different sheets. This is the first sheet where we would all put in our individual scores. So we would list all of the projects here, okay? And then these are the categories we would judge them on: public safety and health, infrastructure, service efficiency, mandatory legal requirements, history, culture, and quality of life. I think we're taking that out. But there are 5 categories, and those are listed in the instructions for completing the capital form. So there's a little bit more tweaking we have to do to this, but it's public safety, legal requirements, infrastructure, efficiency, and impact on service or personnel. So that's,
you got this, Peter?
yes. So this is from Peter. So, and then if you can see in this, the weight factor here, the 1 through 5, that will change to 1 through 7, because each of us will be one of these columns. Like Sue, you would be 1, Amy, you'd be 2, Greg 3, so on and so forth. And all of our scores would be tabulated individually in each column, and there are calculations all built in that would figure it out. And then the weight factor here, you know, if we decide one year that, you know, obviously mandatory legal requirements is always going to have a heavy weight factor, but we decide that efficiency is really important for us, and we want to focus on efficiency this year. We can manipulate the weight factor, and that will determine the list of projects for us.
I think Mr. Terenzini said that the mandatory legal requirements come right off first thing.
I agree.
Yep.
So, so these are not tried and true 5, 4, 2, 5. These are kind of left over from years prior. So we'll decide on this how we see fit going forward. And then once we fill this sheet out, it goes to this sheet here. And this is what the compiled results will look like. And we've kind of included some of the lease payments that we know we have just based on the information from the years before. So like the, I don't know if street sweeper is correct, but we know we had a couple leases, so we added them in. Yeah, this doesn't look like it's, we did edit it a little bit. So this will go back down to 5, not 7. Any lease payments that we know we have to make come right off the top. And it's just, it's calculated out. And if there's another funding source, the project that still gets weighted gets in here, but you watch the running tally change until we just run out of money. And I'm not doing this as much justice as Peter did when he was reviewing it because he's lived this, but it is very exciting to have this, have it ready for us and just ready to just plug it in when we get all of our submission forms. And I would love to field questions, but I'm also not super savvy on Excel, so I can't promise I'll have the answers.
This is really old because the Univents were with a long time ago.
Yeah, we were playing with this if on September 25th we were looking at this. That's why it says it was last edited then. But we're gonna tweak it a little bit more, and probably on a day when Matt's here, because he's very, or I can send this to anybody. I don't know how to. Google Drive is also a weakness of mine, so I don't know how to share this with everybody, but I would love to share this with everybody. So I promise I'll figure that out to invite you guys in so you have access to this so you can look at it too. But I'm excited because that's a big chunk of the work for us, and now we have this and we have this created for us to work with. So
I remember Finance Committee received all the projects tallied like this when they first started. So I remember this form.
yeah, it's really nice too. It's certainly overwhelming when you first see it, but it breaks down really nicely to what it is that we're going to be doing. And the other nice part is for these weighted factors, let's say it's a project that you just don't know enough about or you just don't care enough to score. If you leave a 0, you can't negatively affect that project because the 0 won't be weighted in. So you can't also bias a project either by just not ranking it. So let's say only 5 of us score it out of the 7, it'll just be the score from those 5 versus the 7, which I thought that was pretty cool that was baked into the idea.
So this would be instead of the one that we looked at last meeting. Okay.
Instead of the one we looked at last meeting, yep. Those were ones Mr. Terenzini provided us to look at, and that's what we had at the time. And after our meeting, this has become available and it works, and it's what we used historically for CIPC years ago. So I think it would be nice to bring back to life and do what some people are used to seeing. So basically we just need the information on that. That would be good. Does anyone have any questions about this? Great. I'm going to stop sharing my screen then. Maybe.
It gets a little blurry with all the zeros there.
It is a lot, but I think we're going to be like, I don't know. I was really excited looking at it, but I don't know.
Well, I have one question.
Yes.
And maybe I missed this because I was distracted with my daughter and pizza, but would we then go into that document and put our scores in, or would there be a form that we fill out that puts the scores in so we're doing it blind?
It's a great question. I feel like Peter's gonna know the answer to that. Matt even might even know the answer to that, but there is a way that we're gonna be doing it where we just have to enter it in and then you copy it. They were doing it and I really cannot remember. I apologize.
Okay.
Matt should know how to send it to the form so we can look at it.
Yep. It's on the Google Drive. Just have to know how to share that, which
Okay.
I'm just not efficient in that. I apologize to everybody.
We'll let you go this time.
All
I was
right.
gonna say, if you can get, who owns it? Is it Peter?
Peter owns it and he shared it with me and Matt. And I'm sure he'd be willing to share it with everybody, but I don't know.
Well,
I don't know how to
if he can share it with me, then I can share it with everybody. If he can make me a
share it.
moderator or whatever, I'm proficient in Google.
Okay. I'm writing that down.
And I know he's laid up right now, but he'll still respond. He responded to me earlier.
All right.
Yeah, Peter? Peter's laid up?
We'll tell you later.
All right.
So that's the scoring system. It's pretty exciting. And the next
Wait to score
thing
things.
exactly. So I know we talked about from basically the month of November, we're going to be just working on the annual capital plan, but Mr. Terenzini does want us to create a 5-year plan as well. I told him that it's not really likely that would be able to do that for him in the month of November. So the deliverable that he should expect for the beginning of December would be just the annual plan. However, we can still take the time afterwards because we will have a lot of information to possibly look at creating something for him and maybe get that maybe January for him if we spend a little time in December.
Yep.
And maybe we can get it done by December 1st, but I would rather, over deliver than over promise and under deliver. You know what I mean? So he does want that from us. And if we could create that and have that in the back of our minds, that would be good too. And other than that, did everybody have a chance to read the meeting minutes from this morning?
Yep.
All right. So we'll go a little out of order here, but I'll take a motion to accept those meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
I have
Can
a
you
motion.
repeat it, please?
The meeting minutes were from September
23rd.
3rd.
3rd. Thank you, Greg. All right, so I have a motion and a second, and I'll go by roll call. Sue,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Amy,
Oh, aye.
Greg,
Aye.
and Colleen, aye. Perfect. So those pass, and I will send those off to the clerk. And
I didn't hear you call her name either, so
oh, really?
must have been a glitch.
Oh, sometimes my Wi-Fi is no good. I apologize. And then future meetings, we are on for October 20 something there at the end of the month, right? And that's another 8 o'clock meeting. Is that still
28th.
Does that still work for everybody? Maybe we'll have Peter come in on that meeting and he can really do the scoring system justice. What else would we like to probably talk about at that meeting, you think?
What I think would be helpful when Peter takes us through it is if he could show us like fake data or something and that would be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, dry run through the sheet as a group would, I think, be very helpful.
I mean, and if he needs projects, he knows where the 5-year plan for the schools is. He could use that.
Okay.
That's all going to change now anyway, I think. So we're going to be pulling things out of it that would be included in the train piece and putting it up as, I think, is what's going to end up happening. I could be speaking out of turn there, but like the roofs would still be in there separately. So, and if he needs help with a list of projects, tell him to give me a call. I'll dig.
All right, so we'll have Peter doing the scoring system. I'm gonna put the review the train worksheet because at this point everyone will have had it. I apologize for not sending that out. I think I was in the car when I got Jay's email and I just totally spaced on that one.
Everybody on the call has it. Should I send it to Matt and Carl too?
Yeah, I think that would be good. So that way those will be some significant things. And then we'll be basically ramping up to start scoring submission sheets because we'll be having those right after that meeting. So,
So, Colleen, our meetings are October 28th, November 4th, and November 11th, right?
yes, those are what we have for now. And then we figured we would add more once we saw what kind of data we were working with. And the 4th and the 11th, we're going to be back at 7 o'clock.
Yep.
Okay. So I think those are already in for Sue. We have those, the links for those. So I just need to make sure I send off agendas and things like that. All right. So we did our meeting minutes, our future meetings. So we are, unless anyone has anything else that they might want to tell me to add for the next meeting or. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, because I can't remember and I don't have my notes with me. Where are we on departments getting proposals together? Like, when are we going to see those again?
So Mr. McGoldrick has sent them out to department heads, and he's going to collect everything and then give us everything by November 1st. They're supposed to have it all into him by October 30th, I think, and then it's just transitions right to us.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Sue,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
Colleen, aye. All right, have a good night, everybody.